The snare levers are perhaps the trickiest of the levers. They have a lot of different features to them. But first, let's go ahead and introduce the snare drum itself. The top resonating head is a really thin mylar film that can be easily dented, so you want to be careful about punching your foot in here. It does have a protective metal rim around it, but again, just be a little more cautious. Off to the left side, there's a little black dial. To loosen that to the left means to give that an open hit with no snare sound. But the preference for most players is going to be having that sound. There's a lot of different sound features just with that alone, so there's just a touch hair movement on that will give a tighter or looser snare rattle. To get at the beater side, which is the Focus X, has a nice little dampening ring around the side. Go ahead and just lift that open. It's a 6 lug, so what you'll want to do is make sure that these are all a certain type. And again, you want to use a star formation in tightening those up in a way that's even pitch all the way around. The resonating heads tend to be tight pretty much all the way, so you can really just see here what the tension is, pretty even all the way around. This is isolated, sound isolated, so there's no transfer of buzzing sound or sympathetic buzz by these 3 O-rings which isolate the drum in this center of the main frame. Go ahead and now we'll just go look at the levers themselves. What we have here again are 2 levers that are coming up and basically hitting the bottom of the snare drum. What you'll be able to notice at a quick overview is that the spring is located and connected to these 2 metal devices, which are allowed to slide up or slide down, and that'll allow a different swing length for your sticks to come up and into the head. And if you want a real tight, short swing, you go ahead and move those all the way back to the back of the drum. And I think most people like to keep them more or less in the middle. Underneath the top of this nut is another nut, and what you can do is you can loosen that and then tighten this one up, and that's going to create more spring tension on there, so it's going to be a little harder to push that down. Again, that's just a preferential thing. You'll be able to find that touch preference after playing a drum for a while and getting used to whatever you think would be best. Those are the 2 different slide scales for that. If you want to have your snare sticks come and hit a certain spot of your drum head, whether it be the dead center or a little bit off to the side, you can move these up and down with the rollers in the levers, and that allows for different sticks. This is a 8-inch stick, so if you ever find a stick that you like a little better, these are coming with hickory, which is a standard drumstick, but there are different types of models of tips, with nylon tips, graphite tips, you name it, different woods, all sorts of different things. This is all about players' preference in this area, but these are the standard drum world issued things, and I think you'll like it. Putting that back down, what we want to do now is kind of like the bass drum pedal, is to measure where this stick is hitting in regards to the lever coming down. If I push the lever all the way down, is that drumstick still making contact with that head? Because I want to be able to rest my heel onto that snare lever and then bring my toe up into whatever pedal I'm playing and not have to keep my foot elevated all the time. It's again a preference, but something that I want my players to enjoy the feature of having. So what I notice is that the snare head is coming up ever so slightly, so I need to lessen the length that is being thrown into that head, and to do so, either I can hold that down and lift this up a little bit, and then you see a little wing nut, or a flat disc nut, and I can tighten that down, and now it's just barely hitting the head, but allowing it to resonate more freely after it makes contact. So it's hitting the head and slightly resting below it. So I like where that position is now. And now what you have to do is go into the drum. If you can do it from back behind here if you know where it is, but if it's your first time, you want to take a look around and see that there is a large coupling nut that you'll want to tighten down to make sure that the sleeve is tight above it. So therefore, making this a positive connection, there's no loose parts whatsoever. You can also make that adjustment even just above here by turning the nut that is extending above and beyond the pedal itself. And it just is just a touch you might be looking for. It's going to shrink that sleeve enough for you to get what you want. Again, you'll probably have to make these adjustments very seldom, but if you were to move the stick up and down, that will be a micro adjustment you might want to make. And for this other feature, what I'm going to do now is reach inside there and pull down the sticks so that they are sticking out of the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and move my two springs all the way up. And might have to reach in there and just make sure that bottom nut isn't spinning around, but in this case it worked out alright. So now you have your sticks coming down onto your handle and creating that kind of sound. Again, you might, if you really like this style, you might want to dial these in so that it's making a nice little contact without stressing out your levers too much. But for an occasional play, or even just doing one at a time, that's an option as well. So that is the overview of your sticks. There'll be other options that will be coming out in the future that will get this stick to hit underneath the hi-hat if it's a 14-inch hi-hat. With your spring pushed all the way forward on your left side, the side of the hi-hat, and if you have 14-inch hats in there, you can have another sound option, which is a snare on the down hit and a hi-hat hit on the up hit. So you have, and that is just an option for this left side if you're using that 14-inch hat.